everybody, welcome to Jacey's Creek, where I talk about every episode of Pacey and Joey as a couple and as individuals. My name's Emily, and today we are doing The Full Moon Rising, Season 2, Episode 5. So without further ado, let's get into it, but remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, where I post every episode on here if you do not have Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other platform where you cannot find my podcast. Also remember to follow my Instagram, that's Glitter and Potter, and my TikTok, Pacey and Joey. So without further ado, remember to put on your post notification, and let's get on. So the first scene that we have is of Joey, and Joey and Dawson are in the bedroom with the television on, and there's a wolf climbing and there's a full moon in the background, and Dawson says, "Is there anything more beautiful than a full moon?" And it's close enough to touch, but it's a million miles away. And the camera starts zooming around the room, leaving Dawson and Joey nowhere to be seen but the night. And it focuses on the window. So they're basically outside on the roof, which, one, makes me super duper nervous, but two, why are they on a roof? But okay, at least they're not on a blanket making out, because I'm pretty sure that's what they do in one of the episodes. Anyway, and Dawson, I'm pretty sure it was last episode. Anyway, Dawson says, "Well," and the wind starts blowing through the windows, and it cuts to Dawson and Joey, like I said, laying on the roof with the reflection of the moon behind them through the window. And Joey says, "It's actually only 2,040 miles, Dawson, and it won't be completely full until tomorrow." Way to ruin the romance, Joey. You're sitting on the roof with your boyfriend, and you're like, "Actually, it's 200,040 blah blah blah, and you're wrong, so it's actually not full." Okay. And Dawson cuts in by saying, "It's still romantic," and Joey makes a face and says, "How does the moon become the state flower for romance? I mean, it's only a natural satellite that reflects the sunlight." Okay, every time that Joey and Dawson are doing something, and Dawson's like, "This is so romantic," Joey always goes, "Well, actually, it's not romantic, because da 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 da," and it's like, okay, Joey, shush for a second. Which I agree, because most of the stuff isn't romantic with Dawson, but still. And Dawson says, "Well, casting it peacefully and silent glows over the chaos world. I love the full moon." And Joey says, "But peaceful, Dawson. A full moon turns everything off killer. It turns everything upside down. I mean, weird things always happen during a full moon. Dun dun dun. Like the wolves. Oh!" And Dawson says, "Is Joey Potter being superstitious?" "No, never." Actually, I had a full conversation about this, like being superstitious, to my Mimi. And we were talking about how her mom always used to, whenever there was like a black cat, she would put an X on her window, and then like the front of her window, so there would be like X's all over the windshield. And then there was another one where my grandfather's mom would say you can't wash the clear clothes on New Year's, because then it's like washing out a person or something, and it was really weird. So that's what came to my head. And Joey defensively says no. And Dawson says, "How do you figure that?" And Joey says, "Human beings are made up of 70% of water, right?" And Dawson kisses her on her chin and says yes, and Joey smiles, and she says, "And the moon controls the time." And Dawson goes, "Mm-hmm," and Dawson kisses her lips. And Joey says, "Pulling great bodies of water back and forth, it does the same to us." I have no idea what she's talking about, to be completely honest. I mean, I do, but I don't. I'm like, how does this... Okay. And Dawson says, "Really?" by kissing her. And Joey says, "Pull in different directions, sorting the flow of things." And Dawson, "Yeah." And Joey says, "I'm telling you, weird things always happen during the full moon." And Dawson goes, "You're scaring me." And then Dawson slips on the roof and goes, "Oops," and he laughs. And Joey says, "Very funny." And Joey looks back at the full moon. Which one? Why the heck is he on the roof? Like, you could choose a better spot. But, okay. You could always go to, like, Joey's house, but whatever. The next scene that we have is scene 1 of Pacey. And Andy is walking to the video store where Pacey is watching a porn movie. And Pacey goes, well, if it isn't Little Miss Miffy. And Andy goes, I'm just here to get a video, Pacey. And Pacey's like, can I help you? And Andy's like, don't bother. I can help myself. Why don't you go back to your Debbie does Dallas anyway. And Pacey says, it's jacuzzi fluish, actually. You notice how the most interesting part of porn movies is the title? Think about it. You got the Chefmaker, romance. I can't with Pacey. The fact that this is what he does with his shop. Like, Pacey, you don't have anything better to do with your time? Like, I'm not even gonna finish all this. Like, I was just like, the first time I saw this scene, I was like, why is he watching a porn movie when he's at work? Like, doesn't that ruin the whole thing? And then, like, Andy continues by saying, I don't know why they bothered being clever. I mean, they're all the same to me. They should have the same title. Women Pacey will never do. Ooh, a burn. And Pacey goes, ouch, you know, Miffy, we should really just bite the bullet. And Andy goes, meaning? And Pacey says, all this verbal spelling we're giving is getting a little dangerous. So maybe we should just go on a date before someone gets hurt. Pacey, that's what, okay. And Andy says, forget it. And Pacey says, come on, you know you want to. And he says, well, maybe if I was asked politely. Which, that's why I was like, come on, Pacey, like, you could do this a little bit better. Be the gentleman that we know. Write on the walls. Do something. Go on a boat. Make a boat. I don't care. Call it true love. But the way that he did that, I was like, okay. And maybe this is, like, one of the reasons where, like, Pacey becomes more of a gentleman because of Andy. And then he becomes even more of a gentleman when he sees Joey. And then Pacey says, okay, Andy, would you like to go on a date with me tonight? And Andy says, okay. And sarcastically he says, well, don't sound too enthused. And Andy says, I'll try to restrain myself. I love how they're just bickering back and forth while they're like, oh, I like you. And she says, so where are we going? And Pacey says, how about the movies? That way we don't have to talk to each other too much. Less chance of punches being thrown. And Andy says, good idea. And Pacey says, great. I'll pick you up at 7. You live on Western, right? And then Andy, like, panics and says, I'll meet you there. And Andy's like, no. Or Pacey's like, no, it's a date. I'll pick you up. And Andy's like, okay, well, how about we meet at the ice house? I mean, neutral ground. And I love how Pacey's just like, I can pick you up. It's a date, like, at your house. I actually made a boy drive around the corner because I didn't want him to know that my dad was, like, I was going on a date. So I made him, like, drive around the corner because I never met this guy. And he was like, yeah, I can take you home. And I'm like, no, you can drop me off right here, like, 2 blocks away from the house, and I can walk from there. And I made the excuse, which is actually a good excuse because I never met this guy. I was like, I just don't want you to know where I live because what if you know where I live and you kidnap me? So that was my excuse, but my dad always says that the boys should pick you up and all this different kind of stuff, and I'm like, nah, I just don't want you to know, period. And Pacey says, Andy, it's fine, your house is on my way, and Andy says, well, maybe we shouldn't do this then. And Pacey says, come on, Andy, don't wuss out on me. And Andy hesitates and says, well, okay, 7:30, see you there, don't be late. And she doesn't really say, see you there at the ice house or anything, so I can see why Pacey looks confused and then smiles and then says, cool. And then Andy cuts out from the video store and starts smiling. And honestly, I feel bad for Pacey because he's trying so hard. And Andy's like, no, look, it's okay. And he's just so confused on why she doesn't want to, which we all know why. But it's just kind of like, okay, Pacey. But we understand. We understand why Andy does this. And again, the fact that they're just being so sarcastic with the whole thing kind of scared me, but they turned out to be good. So there's actually 2 scenes that I need to go for Joey, but however, this is just a really quick scene that I didn't really think goes with the scene, but anyway. So Mitch and Gail are talking about Thursday nights, and we all know if we actually watched the show and didn't skip around with only Pacey and Joey, that we would know that Thursday nights, both Mitch and Gail were like their nights where they were getting divorced. And they did this in front of Dawson and Joey, and Dawson asks what's Thursday night, and Joey then says that she has to go to work, and Dawson and Joey talk about Thursday night, and Joey says, don't worry, it's a full moon, so don't worry about your parents. And then there's scene 2 of Joey is they cut to the ice house where Joey is sketching a customer, while Jack is making origami figures out of paper, and Joey stops and counts her tips. And Joey says, 2:08, Saturday night. Where is everybody? And Jack says, relax, enjoy the peace. While Jack's like, meditate, why don't you, my friends? And then Joey says, if Mr. Bottleless Cup of Coffee won't leave, I'll close the place down. And Jack's like, you really don't like being a waitress, do you? And Joey's like, what gives you the first clue? And Jack says, you uttered this tray for our customers. And Joey says, and you find this new foundation stunnery? And Jack says, absolutely, come on. At what other time in your life have you gone across the 2 different walks of life? So many people that just randomly cross paths, each a different story, different set of hopes, different set of dreams. And Joey says, way to blame you for their their food being cold. There's enough clams in the chowder. I love how Jack is just so like peace to earth, and Joey's like, are you kidding me? Like, they complain about their food all the time. And Jack says, why are you so angry? And Joey says, it's a full moon, it freaks me out. And Jack says, not just tonight, all the time. And Jack walks away, and Joey ponders what she just heard. And I agree with Jack. Joey is pretty angry half the time. Like, throughout, like, season 1 and season 2 especially, she was always angry. And I'm like, Joey, calm down, girlfriend. Like, it's gonna be okay. And that's exactly how Jack probably feels. So the next scene that we have is scene 2 of Pacey. And it cuts to Pacey at Annie's house, and he knocks on the door, and Annie's mom answers. Keep in mind, he had no idea where to go, so he just went to Annie's house, which I'm surprised he remembered where it was, but anyway. And Annie's mom goes, yes, and Pacey says, hi, I'm here for Andy. We have a date tonight, and Annie's mom's like, you must be Pacey, come in, please. So obviously, like, even though Andy was kind of like, I don't want you to come to my house, she obviously told her mom what was going on, and she remembers, but there's still like that, like, okay. And Pacey says, thanks, she's not mad at me, is she? I just kind of got mixed up between the ice house, the movie house, your house. It's really confusing. And his mom says, I'm sure she'll be down soon. And Pacey says, oh, you know, we're gonna miss the movie now. She's going to intimidate me. And Annie's mom said, I'm sure you can talk her out of it. She's very taken with you. And Pacey goes, is she? And Annie's mom says, she talks about you all the time. And Will, that's Annie's father. And he'll be here any minute. I'm sure he wants to give you the 3rd grade. And Tim, you should meet Tim. And then she starts yelling, Tim, Tim. And then to Pacey, she says, he has those darn headphones on, which we all know that's not the case. It was her brother who died in a car accident, which I find very, very sad. It makes me like cry every single time. And Pacey says, who's Tim? And Annie's mom says, Annie and Jack's older brother. He goes to Columbus. He comes home some weekends. I'll tell you what, you can stay for dinner. You finish the table, include Andy yourself. And Pacey says, sure, which I don't know why he automatically goes, sure. And then Annie's mom keeps calling for Tim, and then she goes upstairs, and then Pacey's like, okay, this is a very first bizarre date. which I would agree, but I'm surprised, like, I knew that he didn't want to be rude, but at the same time, he could have said no, like, they're going to the movies, which I guess he wanted to make a good first impression, but I don't really know. The third scene that we have is where they're going to the ice house. We're in the ice house, and Jack is tapping on the lobster tank, and Joey says, "Hey, how's our lone customer?" And then the lights go back off and they come back on. And Joey looking around says, "Oh my god, the pump is down. Jack, if the lobsters die, we're gonna lose a fortune." And Jack's like, I didn't touch that, because she automatically goes and blames Jack. And Jack's like, "Hey, why don't we throw them back in the ocean and give them another chance at life?" And Joey's like, "Yeah, if you do that, you're gonna have to catch them right. You're gonna go right in them with them." And she says, "Hurry up." And then Andy comes into the ice house, and Andy is like, "Where is he?" And Jack is like, "Who?" And Andy's like, "Pacey." And Joey's like, "I haven't seen him." And Andy's like, "Well, I was supposed to meet with him tonight, so we went to the movie theaters, and I waited till after the show started, and he never shows." And then she noticed them lifting up the lobster, and she's like, "What are you doing, guys?" And they just ignore her. And she goes, so anyway, then I remember that we're supposed to meet here, but now he's not here either. So that must mean he's totally blowing me off, or..." And then she goes, "Oh my god." And Jack's like, what's the matter?" And Andy goes, "Jack, the house. He said he wanted to pick me up. What if he went to the house?" And I love Joey's response to this, because she goes, "Good, it's about time." Pacey showed some equity, which I love how, like, the slow bits of pieces just keep coming in with Pacey and Joey. Like, it's not like full on, but like we can see how it's like coming into pieces. And I think this is like one of the first scenes that we see in season 2 where it's actually like her like noticing each other. Like, they never notice each other whatsoever. And Jack says, "Andy, look, don't worry about it. It's okay." And Andy's like, "Are you crazy? If he shows up and she's..." Oh my god. And she automatically runs out. And Jack is like, Andy! Which I feel bad for Jack and I feel bad for Andy, because Andy she didn't clear it up with him. Like, I would be like at his front doorstep, like, "Do not pick me up at my house. We are meeting right here. Like, don't go anywhere." So then the next scene that we have is scene 3 of Andy. And you cut to Andy's house, and Andy walks in, and Pacey's like, "Hey, you're here." And Andy's like, "Hi, what are you doing here?" And Pacey's like, "Listen, I'm kind of sorry. I kind of got confused where I was supposed to pick you up, but don't worry, your mom's being really cool about it." And he's like, "Okay, good, let's just go." And Pacey's like, "Actually, I kind of told your mom that we were going to stay for dinner." And he's like, "Okay, well, we'll just sneak out. She'll never miss us." And Pacey's like, "You're kind of being rude here. Like, shouldn't we tell her first?" And Andy's like, "Look, you have no right to be here, okay? You were not invited. My family is none of your business. And what's with my mother? What did you say to her?" And Pacey's like, "Slow down. What's the problem here?" He's like, "I did nothing." But Andy's anxiety was like... And he's like, "What did she say to you?" And he goes, "Nothing, okay? She just invited me into the normal Rockwell painting, better than your home, and politely invited me to dinner. It seems like, unlike her spoiled, rich society girl of a daughter, I'm actually worthy in her eyes of meeting the country club father and the Ivy League brother. And can I just say, I thought we were done with this, Pacey. Like, I thought he was done with calling her the rich girl." And Andy's like, "Okay, let's just go in." And then Pacey's like, "Don't be rude. Like, you can't be rude. She invited me and Andy." And Andy goes, "Pacey, please, please." And Pacey goes, "What? Are you ashamed of me, so you don't want me to meet your own brother?" And she goes, "No, just not now, okay?" And Pacey goes, Andy? And Pacey goes, and she goes, "What?" And he goes, "What's the problem?" And she's like, "Tim died. He's dead, okay?" Which, this whole episode, Andy just breaks my heart to pieces. It literally just shows how, like, much Pacey, again, learns that she's not a spoiled rich girl. She has problems, and sadly he has to learn those problems in that scene, and it's very, very sad. The next scene that we have is scene 4 of Joey, and it cuts back to the ice house, and Joey says, look, we have here about 10 minutes before the lobsters take a backswim. I'm screwed. No, I'm dead. And Jack's like, okay. and Jack is trying to fix it while Jack goes, alright, okay then. I think I got it. And then the power goes out again, and Joey's like, nice going, Einstein. And then a customer, the old man who was ordering a bunch of coffee, says, try unplugging the power source and then plugging it back. And Jack does it, and it works. And Joey goes, thank you, mister. And Jack's like, that was weird. And Joey goes, full moon, remember? And then Jack goes, yeah, right. And Joey says, I wish he'd leave. I mean, how many coffee can a person consume? And Jack's like, Joey, I don't think he's really here for the coffee. And Joey says, well, he hasn't even ordered any food. For a smart girl, she can really be dense sometimes. and Jack goes, I think he's just here he doesn't have anywhere else to go. Or, maybe he doesn't have a family. Or, maybe he did, but they're gone now. And I think that's kind of him referring to himself, but oh well. And then he continues by saying, we really don't know anything about him. And Joey's like, maybe he lost his wife or something. And that was kind of referring to Joey's mom a little bit. And Jack goes, or maybe a child. And that was kind of referring to his brother. And Joey goes, and then the camera goes back to the table and the customer's gone. And Joey goes, that was weird. It's just like and Jack says, disappeared. And then Joey walks over and sees no tip. And she goes, yeah, no tip. And Jack holds back and then picks up a napkin. And under it, there's a $100 bill. And I love Joey's reaction to this because it's kind of funny to me. Jack calls her name and shows the $100 bill. And she goes, 100? Oh my God, Jack, we're rich. And Joey hugs Jack. And she goes like, oh my God. And Jack's like, hey, look at this. Look what else we see. I love how Joey thinks $100 rich. Which it is. That's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. Because I'm like, you really needed that. I think the old man knew that. And then there was like a little note left there. And it says, by moonlight many years my true love did what I know. And by that moonlight I begged her to wait. But that night she did come. So young lovers, hear my word. Do not scorn love away. Though love is changing ever still. Soon came the light of day. And Joey starts to walk away. But Jack grabs her arms and kisses her, which was cute until we realized that he did not like girls. Which it would have been a really good scene if they got stayed together, but for me, I'm like, oh, they don't stay together. But go Jack for coming out on this, coming out on his sexuality. But I'm like, no, this was a cute scene. What's the problem? That is my problem, my friends. The next scene that we have is scene 5 of Joey, and it cuts to the ice house, and Joey walks outside and finds Dawson, and then she's surprised, and Joey goes, Dawson, what are you doing here? And keep in mind, she just kind of cheated on him. Kind of, not really, because, well, I guess that is cheating. And Dawson goes, I had to get out of that house. Hey, Jack. And Jack's like, hey, why don't you take off, Joey? I'll finish up. And Joey's like, okay. And Joey and Dawson are walking away, and Joey looks back at Jack, which can be a little bit awkward, not gonna lie. You just kissed him, and your boyfriend just comes out of nowhere, and it's like, oh, hey, nothing new here, just same usual work day, kind of, not really. The next scene that we have is scene 4 of Pacey, and it cuts back to Annie's house, and Annie and Pacey are talking, and Annie continues by saying, Columbus had just beaten corn. It was homecoming exactly a year ago. Dad had too many tailgates, margaritas, so Mom was driving. Jack and I were fighting for Tim's attention. We were always fighting for his attention, and she didn't see this truck. Please don't say anything to anyone, Pacey, because I don't want my mom to be the top of gossip. And we all know that Pacey would never say anything, especially after what tomorrow, like, the whole town gossip there. He knew, like, he would never say anything to hurt anyone, and I know Pacey would never do that to Andy. But he says, I won't say a word. Is your mom getting any help? And Andy's like, we tried. She was in the hospital for a while. Dad kind of bailed. He checks in once a week. He lives in Providence with the business, which is under, so he's hurting too. So it's basically just me. I mean, Jack helps, you know, some, but he lives in this fantasy world where if you don't think about it, then it just doesn't happen. I love this part because that's kind of like what it is for me and my brother. Like, I always want to talk about it, and my brother just doesn't. And it's like his motto too is like, if you just don't think about it, it just doesn't happen. Which I think that's a lot of shy teen guys. Like, they just kind of don't talk about it, and that's just how life is. And then she continues by saying, I mean, she's not always like this. I mean, sometimes she's fine, but you know, you never know. I'm the only one who can handle her, and sometimes it just gets really hard. And she starts crying, and I love this scene so very much because Pacey tries to hug her, and he's like, come here, and Andy just pushes him away, and Andy's like, no, don't pity me, okay? And Pacey's like, Andy, come here, and Andy's like, no, and then Pacey pulls her in, and he just whispers, it's okay, it's okay. Like, that's the kind of comfort that you need. Like, I know it wasn't like a real, like, first date, but this scene was very, 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 very cute. Like, it's probably one of my favorite scenes besides the bathroom door thing, which we're gonna get into later in the season. But I really, really think that this was one of my favorite scenes. The next scene that we have is scene 6 of Joey. And it cuts to Dawson's house, and Joey and Dawson are climbing up to the ladder, and Dawson's like, you are so right about the moon, and Joey's like, yeah, and Joey starts to go through the window, and Dawson stops her, and Dawson says, hey, can we just sit out here for a couple minutes? And Joey's like, are you okay? You kind of seem spooked. And Dawson's like, I just want to go back in that house. It's just the house of despair. And Joey's like, Dawson, I had a really rude night too. And she was about to tell him about the kiss, but Dawson's like, you know what, let's just forget everything. All I want to do is just forget about this godforsaken night. I feel like if you told her, he would just push her off the roof. Like, I just thought about that. Can you see it, you guys? Like, Dawson, Jack kissed me. Push. Like, bye. Or he'll just slide off the roof like, see ya, I don't want to be here anymore. And he goes, and he continues by saying, oh, I want to stare into the moonlight of your face because that's the only thing that matters to me. And then they kiss, and Dawson's like, hey, look up at the sky. What do you see? And Joey looks up at the sky, and Joey's like, the moon? And Dawson's like, no, look at the moon. Close your eyes, now what do you see? And Joey doesn't say anything. And Dawson says, it's a man. Joey says, who? A man, remember? And Joey's like, oh yeah, right. The man on the moon, I get it. Oh, but wait. And Dawson says, what? And Joey's like, it's not a man, Dawson, it's a woman. And then they kiss, and Joey says, Dawson, and Dawson says, what? And Joey says, look, I think, and she starts to tell her about Jack, but she sees the pest look and stops. She's like, you're right, because she doesn't want to get pushed off the roof. That's why she didn't tell him. Like, whee! And she says, it's a really beautiful moon. And the song goes, hands by it, like Jules, and playing the background. And it cuts to Dawson and Joey on the roof, staring at the moon. Dawson starts to cry and leans his head on Joey's shoulder. Joey pulls him in, and then Jack is reading the note from Left Turn the Customer, and then Pacey is still hugging Andy, and and it cuts back to Joey holding him closer, and cut to the moon with the fog and covering up. So we're gonna look up Jules, the hand. Well, I think that's what it was. It might be a pause in this. But I'm going to look up the lyrics to this song because I did not do that before. And I want to describe the moment to you guys. that is happening with all two of them. So I love how Pacey is comforting Andy and Joey is comforting Pacey. Or, wait. Joey is comforting Dawson. So I think that's one of my favorite scenes. It's just kind of like, the two are so different, but it's like kind of like needed in this. So the lyric says, if I could tell you the world just one thing, it could be okay. And not to worry, because worry is wasteful and useless in times like these. Perfect description. I wouldn't be made useless, wouldn't be idle with despair. I'll give myself around my faith, for light does not darkness move fear. My hands are small, I know, but they're your hands. But they're not yours, they're my own. But they're not yours, but I'm my own. And I am never broken. Poverty stole your golden shoes. It did not steal your laughter. And heartache came to visit me, but I knew it wasn't after long. We'll fight not out of spite, for someone must stand up for what's right. 'Cause their man has no voice, there shall ours shall go singing. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours, they are my own. And I am never broken. In the end, only kindness matters. I will get down on my knees and I will pray. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours, they are my own. And I will never be broken. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours, my own. I am never broken. We are never broken. We are God's eyes, God's hands, God's mind. We are God's eyes, God's hands, God's heart. We are God's eyes. We are God's hands. We are God's eyes. I feel like this is just such a comfort song. Like, we just kind of get the vibe that it's just like, it's all gonna be okay. Don't worry. We're all gonna be alright. Everyone just sadly mopes, and Dawson does not push Joey off the roof, which would be a very interesting scene. Like, hope you're cheated, bye. But we are gonna see Dawson figure out next time. So, that is all I have today. And I can't wait to discuss the dance, because that's gonna be a big one. We may see Dawson push her off the roof next time. If you like this episode, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, where I will be posting every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to follow my Instagram, Twitter and Potter, and my TikTok, Pacey and Joey. And I'll catch you next time. Bye, guys.